It's been nearly 10 years since Sicario hit theaters, and even after all this time, it's still widely considered one of the most gripping and influential films of the 2010s. When it came out in 2015, the movie earned a ton of well-deserved praise, not just for the story and performances, but for how it helped launch a few major careers, especially Taylor Sheridan's. Sicario marked his big debut as a screenwriter, and that first script pretty much set him on a fast track to Hollywood stardom. Thanks to the movie's success, a sequel came pretty quickly, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. But that second installment didn't quite land the same way. Even though the sequel didn't get the same level of love, a lot of fans have been holding out hope for a third movie. Some are genuinely curious to see if the series can wrap up on a stronger note. Over the years, cast members and crew have occasionally dropped hints that Sicario 3 is in the early stages of development, but with little real progress being made since Day of the Soldado came out back in 2018, it started to look like Sicario 3 might be stuck in limbo. A big part of the issue seems to be that it's tough to get all the key players, especially the cast and creatives, back together at the same time. Everyone's schedules are just packed. The original Sicario had a powerhouse team behind it, both on-screen and off. The story follows FBI agent Kate Macer, played by Emily Blunt, who uncovers the horrifying aftermath of a drug cartel massacre. She ends up joining a special task force aiming to take down the cartel, and it's run by Josh Brolin's character Matt Graver, along with the mysterious and deadly Alejandro, played by Benicio del Toro. At first, Kate tries to believe in the mission, even as she starts seeing how far Graver and Alejandro are willing to go, breaking rules, crossing moral lines, and just generally doing things that are technically illegal. But the deeper she goes, the more disturbing things become. She finds out that Graver is actually working with the CIA and that Alejandro is a mercenary who shifts allegiances between the agency and even rival drug cartels. Their plan? Straight up assassinate the cartel boss. Not exactly justice, at least not by the book. Interestingly, Emily Blunt didn't come back for Day of the Soldado, which put the spotlight more on Alejandro and Graver, especially as they clashed over a failed mission involving a kidnapped drug lord's daughter. Without Kate, the story felt different, and for a lot of people, it didn't quite have the same punch. Still, the first film had an absolutely stacked cast and crew. Blunt was already on the rise when Sicario came out, but this movie really helped cement her as a major star. And if you rewatch it now, you might be surprised to see Daniel Kaluuya in a solid supporting role as Kate's partner. This was before Get Out and Black Panther made him a household name. On top of that, Sheridan's screenplay got nominated for a Writers Guild of America award, and his next two projects, Hell or High Water and Wind River, which he also directed, got a bunch of praise too. Before long, Sheridan had built a mini empire with shows like Yellowstone and all the spin-offs that followed. But Sicario wasn't just about Sheridan's writing. A huge part of what made the original film so impactful was Denis Villeneuve's direction. His style gave the movie its haunting tone and slow burn tension. So when he and Blunt didn't return for the sequel, a lot of people noticed. Even Del Toro admitted he was hesitant to sign on for the second movie without Villeneuve in the director's chair. And honestly, Villeneuve's schedule hasn't gotten any lighter. He's now one of the most respected directors working today, especially after Dune and its sequel. He said that Dune, Messiah, will be his last film in that sci-fi series, but he's already signed on for other huge projects, like a Cleopatra movie and an adaptation of Rendezvous with Rama. He's also reportedly in talks to direct a movie based on the nonfiction book Nuclear War, a scenario. So squeezing in another Sicario film seems pretty unlikely at this point, especially if it also needs to line up with Blunt, Del Toro, and Brolin schedules. But honestly, before we even worry about who's directing or starring in it, there's a more basic issue. Is Sicario 3 even being written right now? From what we know, the project still seems stuck at the earliest stage. Last year, fans got a couple of quick updates that sounded promising at first, but didn't really amount to much. Emily Blunt mentioned in an interview that she hasn't heard anything official, saying it all just feels like hearsay. On the other hand, Josh Brolin sounded a little more optimistic. He said producer Molly Smith is still passionate about making the third film, but even then, He admitted that Christopher McQuarrie, who was once tied to the development, is no longer involved. And it's not even clear whether Sheridan himself is still working on the script or has stepped away. Meanwhile, none of the major players seem to be slowing down. So there's a very real chance that Sicario 3 might never happen. And while that's disappointing for fans hoping for closure, it might not be the worst thing. The sequel, Day of the Soldado, did leave a few interesting threads dangling. Alejandro survived a near-death experience, and Graver seemed more conflicted about the government's actions, opening the door for the idea that the two of them might eventually turn against the system they once served. There's even potential for Kate to come back and find herself on the same side as them, fighting against corruption from the inside. But here's the thing. The original Sicario had a very tight and powerful ending, and the second film didn't quite match that. So maybe the story didn't need a sequel in the first place. It's also worth thinking about the kind of tone Sheridan set from the very beginning. Sicario was dark, gritty, and totally unflinching. That tone continued in Day of the Soldado, which leaned even harder into moral ambiguity and harsh realism. So if Sicario 3 ever does get made, there's a good chance it'll go even further in that direction. Less about explosions and gunfights, and more about the psychological and emotional toll of living in that world. Alejandro's storyline alone could carry a movie. The fact that he survived such brutal injuries means there's room to explore his trauma, his thirst for revenge, and maybe even some kind of redemption, although we shouldn't expect any kind of clean or satisfying resolution. On the other side, Graver seems like a man whose loyalty is starting to crack. His growing frustration with the intelligence community could lead him to finally push back against the very system he's helped enforce. So instead of tying everything up with a bow, a third film might double down on the themes of existential dread and the ugliness of unchecked power. If anything, Sicario 3 could serve as a brutal reminder that in this world, there are no real heroes, just survivors, casualties, and people trapped in a broken system. Sheridan seems less interested in wrapping up the conflict than he is in showing us just how deep the rot goes. That might not be what everyone wants, especially if they're hoping for a feel-good comeback or a classic redemption arc, but it will be true to the spirit of Sicario. And who knows? Maybe that's exactly why fans are still holding out hope. Because even if we never get closure, the raw tension and unflinching honesty of this series still hit hard. And that's a rare thing in modern cinema. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.